Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to be here, your busy schedules. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank our New Trier Parents Association, who's always looking for ways to make sure that we're bringing parent programs that we really think are relevant to the school. And so I just wanted to thank our NTPA tonight for organizing this. My name is Denise Dubravec, and I'm the assistant superintendent and principal on the Winnetka campus. I'm not sure who I am right now. It feels like I've been here all day. I think I have. But anyway, so I'm just really happy to be here tonight and really blessed to be having sitting beside me here Elizabeth Bennett. She is our music and theater department chair, and she comes to us from many, many, many years of experience in the music field. And I'm going to share some slides with you that give you a little background around Elizabeth. I think I'm binging off you.
That's fine.
Oh, hold on one second. You're not going to go yet? Okay. Yeah, okay. So one of the things that Elizabeth, I felt like, has brought to me, she started here about three years ago as the department chair. She's always looking and reading and learning, and she mentioned to me about Susan Cain's book, and I would call her a Susan Cain super fan. She even got an email from Susan Cain. I'm really jealous. But Elizabeth is someone that's always looking to improve herself, her own practice, the practice of her students, and of course our staff. So I'm just really thrilled Elizabeth's here tonight, and she's going to be offering her perspective as an introvert. And I've learned a lot about being an introvert through Elizabeth. And so I'm just really excited that you're here tonight with us, Elizabeth, and willing to be up here on the stage, which we'll get to that in a minute. But tonight we thought we picked 4 chapters that we wanted to explore. So one of the 4 chapters is the perspective of students, examining introverts through the perspective of students, educators, and parents. By doing so, we're going to gain, we know, a comprehensive understanding how introverts navigate different facets of life, education, and relationships. So the 4 chapters we're going to do are spotlight, friendship, home, classroom, because we think that's probably the most appropriate ones for us here, right? Definitely can't miss the classroom. So I'm going to move on here. Flip. So Elizabeth and I sat down one day. Well, maybe I emailed you, I think. I maybe sent you an email saying, hey, Elizabeth, I've got this great idea. There's this book I want to have you share with me, a book talk on. And I remember she came in to see me. And what were your words?
I said, remember, I chose a profession. When I get on stage, I turn my back to the audience.
So one of the things that so it's very nice to have Elizabeth here tonight. She's like, okay, I'm going to be the focus of this. And yet, for me, I see Elizabeth all the time on the stage. She is in front of people. She is leading her colleagues here tonight. She is just someone that I would not have thought was an introvert. And so I was Googling Elizabeth, and I was looking up some things on her. And so this picture right here, this is the second time Elizabeth was nominated as a Grammy artist. And so there's an educator award for that. And so when I Googled this, what you don't see here is she's being interviewed by ABC. And so I said, Elizabeth, here you're being interviewed. You're always in the limelight. It seems like spotlight. So how does this work for you? Like this example here, I think it was Ravi.
Yeah, it was Ravi from ABC. I was nominated for a Grammy 2 times, made it to the finals, the top 10 in the country. And when it was announced on CBS this morning, I had media immediately reaching out to me, and Ravi from ABC, wonderful person, came out and spent the entire day with me, and it was exhausting. I remember that day I was on radio shows, I was on CBS, I was on a variety of different media outlets during that time, and it was exciting and it was exhausting. I don't know how Taylor Swift does what she does. She's not an introvert. Maybe. But yeah, as you were saying, so what I do here, this is my 20th year in teaching. And I am an introvert, been one all my life. It's not something you really change. As if you read the book, and if you didn't, don't worry. I hope you can still gather something from this. But if you read the book, I know she gave examples of students who tried to change that about themselves and go out of their ways, and it didn't work. So it's really about learning who you are and how to navigate your strengths, because introversion, I don't believe, is anything that's disruptive or bad. I actually think it's a superpower. It's just a matter of learning to utilize it, learning enough about yourself and what makes you tick. And Susan Cain talks a little bit about core personal projects. And I'll talk more about that later, but something that I have delved into is one of my core personal projects is rising up other introverts, especially students, because they have a voice. We just have to listen very carefully to hear it and quiet our own selves to be able to be willing to hear what they have to say and engage in their superpowers. So the reason I'm up here today is because it is one of my core personal projects that I'm going to clarify how it went a little bit from what Denise said. She had the Susan Cain book on her desk, and I got very excited. I went, "Oh, are you reading that? She's great. I love Susan Cain." Because I do. When my husband first heard her speak at the Global Leadership Summit years ago, and he went, "You have got to hear this. Like this woman speaks about you. It's you." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I didn't really know about it. It was probably 10, 12 years ago. And then I finally picked up the original Quiet book. Have any of you read the full Quiet book? Yeah. It's heavy. There's a lot to it. But it's really engaging and amazing too. And I went, "Oh, there's someone else out there who understands this. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know there's others like that." And ever since then, I've read all of her books, engaged in all of her podcasts, there's an Audible special that she has out that I can talk about too. But Susan Cain, as I like to say, is my spirit animal. She speaks to what makes me tick. And so I have taken that, and I thought, if she did that for me, I want to be able to do that for others.
And then you said, okay, you'd be part of this book talk.
And then all of a sudden, I got an Outlook appointment for tonight. So, and I went, and then I saw her at a meeting a couple days later, and I said, "Hey, Denise, what's this Outlook appointment?" And she said, "Oh, you're going to lead a book talk with me about that." And I was like, "Oh," and my stomach dropped, just like it did right now. And here I am.
Yes, here you are. So I think maybe let's get started talking a little bit about the definition of introvert. I think you and I were talking before we came in here that we were all on this spectrum. And that some of us are, ambiverts, sometimes more introverted, sometimes outgoing. And so could you share with us a little bit about, with Susan Cain, and maybe your experiences as how you define introvert?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, introversion and extroversion, and then there's ambivert too. It's where you gather your energy. Do you gather it from being alone, from quietness, from being alone, or maybe with just one other close friend? Is that where you get your energy? Do you get it by being at events and with a lot of people and talking and engaging with others? Or does it kind of depend on the day and it goes back and forth? But introversion is about where you get your energy. It's, I know we're going to talk about being shy too in just a second, but it is different than that. And so if you're on during the day, if you see your child on during the day, but then they come home and they just need to not talk and they just need some quiet time, like, let them have that. Because that's their form of recharging their battery. That's what they're doing. They're not shutting you out. I mean, we are not experts here on this, and your child is unique, and every person is unique. So please keep that in mind as we talk about this. I can speak through my experiences as an introvert and as an educator, but I can't speak to your individual child and family, so just keep that in mind as we say all of this. But, if they go in their room and just need quiet time, and you're going like, "Okay, how's your day? How's your day? How's your day?" and they're not engaging, they need to recharge. And that's what an introvert often needs to do. And sometimes, I think you're going to share a story about not needing that and doing the opposite.
Which one was that?
The dinner table.
Oh, yeah. I'm an extrovert. Surprise. But I was sharing with Elizabeth that I have a sister that's much more quieter. And probably if we gave her the little skills sheet to do, she would fall on the introvert. And I was telling Elizabeth she would do anything and everything she could to get away from me at the dinner table. And she'd be first one done. I gotta go to my space kind of thing. So it's things like this, like when I'm reading this book, I'm like, oh, I start thinking about my family, my childhood, and I'm sure a lot of you do too. But those things just kind of come up, and then there's a reason why. It really wasn't she didn't like me. It was really that she needed probably her time and her space. So getting into the shyness idea, shyness has that idea of fear of negative evaluation. Mm-hmm. So we talk about introverts not shy, being shy. So can you share a little bit about why that is?
Yeah. So there's shyness, there's introversion, two totally different things. You can be one or the other. You can be both. I'm both. So and so you might see, I was the kid that stood behind my mom's leg when I was little and hid, right? And especially with strangers, anything like that. There was a fear element to it. Even now, and we'll talk about some strategies that she talks about in here, but also for students in classrooms or if we're in meetings, gearing yourself up to talk. And part of that can be shyness too, because you're afraid of what others will think. You're afraid of the negativity that could come from it. And so there is a matter of where you get your energy, which is the introversion, extroversion element, and shyness is more about the action item. So it's about doing something and what will happen next and that unknown and the fear of it. So there are different things. There are some examples in the book also where she talks about an introvert who's not shy. There was the one, I can't remember the specific name, but he told his teacher about when I have something to say, I'll say it. Until then, leave me alone. I don't know if you remember that in the book, but I was like, I don't think that person was shy, just an introvert. So there is a difference.
Yeah. And as we were sitting here planning for this, we were reflecting on a story for you when you were younger, and you just had a phone call with your mom about it too, just to reflect on it. So could you please share about your being mistaken as shy?
Yeah, and when I was in first grade, my parents went to parent-teacher conferences, and my first grade teacher asked if I spoke. And I was when I got home, I would just start talking, and tell everything about it all the day because I was safe at home. I was safe with my parents. My parents are quiet too. And they allowed that. It was not a loud household. And I could get home and I could just talk to them about everything I observed in the day because the introverts often tend to be very observant as well. And so I took everything in all day and I let everyone else talk because they did plenty of it. And so my teacher asked if I spoke. And they looked at her like, what? Yeah. And I said, well, she doesn't speak here. So my mom came home and asked me about it, and I said, well, if I speak, I'm going to get in trouble. And she said, well, talk to me about that. I remember first grade, 7 years old or so. And there were some loud kids in the class, and they would get in trouble when they spoke all the time. And I thought, well, I'm just not going to speak. I don't need to do that. They're talking plenty, and they get yelled at, so I'm not going to do that. And it's funny because I look back now as a mother, and how often do we have our kids that say, well, you yelled at us. You didn't yell. Maybe you raised your voice a little bit. But that element of yelling means something very different, I think, as a child than it does as an adult. So I look back now, and I'm like, I bet that teacher was just trying to do some classroom management. But I wasn't going to contribute to that. I was just going to stay out of the way. So my mom, thank goodness, she actually took it upon herself to meet with the teacher again and explain that and say, Elizabeth has a lot to say, but she's afraid she's going to get in trouble. And the teacher went, oh, okay. And something really cool that teacher did, there were a handful of us in that class that we were all like that. We didn't talk. And so the teacher made once a week, had a special thing for us. I don't even remember what it was exactly. It was a book talk, or we got to go eat lunch together or whatever, and it was just us in a small group. And we just talk to that. There's about 5 of us, and I remember that. But that teacher took that feedback, and we got out of the loud classroom, given all together in a quiet environment, and we all opened up then. Now, that didn't last for me all the time in every single setting, but it did work very well then. And so I was grateful that I had my parents who took that feedback and then went back to the teacher. But more so, I was so grateful for that teacher to take that feedback and do something and see who I was and all of my classmates too, and give us an opportunity for a voice.
I appreciate you sharing these stories. So we're going to move into quiet in the classroom. So let's talk. Where does the quiet in the classroom come in? Where do schools come into all of this?
Yeah. One thing I love about New Trier, and I talked about this when I was considering applying for this job. I asked Denise. I remember it very specifically. I said, "Are there leaders who are introverts?" Because I didn't want to go to a place that was just going to be loud all the time and just not be heard. I know that much about myself. I am an introvert, and it's not going to work for me to just be on all the time and be fake, just like we had so many examples in the book. And one thing about New Trier that you said was, yeah, we actually did a study or a poll with our faculty several years ago on who were introverts and extroverts, and there are actually more introverts here than extroverts. I thought, oh, that's really great. And something here, I have found that to be true here at New Trier, but again, having been in other places, this is a huge school, and yet there's so many opportunities for small, quiet connections that I love here. And even some of my favorite places I'm pointing out there are in the halls. You can walk, all those benches, all those areas where students can sit and do their work uninterrupted and have that time. And we walk around during the lunch periods, during any time, and students have their AirPods or whatever on, and they're engaged and they're studying and they're listening to music. And that's a form of recharging too, or at least it very much can be. But yet we have the cafes over here and everything, and students can get together during their lunches and free times and get together and talk with people, and extroverts can recharge too. And we have, if you've walked by, some of my favorite areas are the big wooden circles in the hallways, and it's like these cozy little nooks, and there's always students in there. New Trier has so many places that it allows for quiet. It allows for students to curl in and feel comfortable. And I can tell you from experience, not every school has that. And so this is a big place, yes, and the space alone allows for quiet, allows for recharging. And then, of course, there's classrooms and activities and athletics and everything else, too.
Can you talk a little bit more about how to be heard from the classroom if you're an introvert?
Yeah.
The strategies.
So I know she talks about this here, but sometimes it's learning a little bit about the classroom environment first. And I think most students would do that wherever where they are at the beginning of a year. They go into the classroom, they have to learn a little bit about the teacher, whether it's, I can just talk all the time, or no, I can get away with not talking ever. And so yes, every classroom is going to be different. Something about being an introvert is sometimes you have to plan out your energy. And I can speak for myself today. I had various meetings this afternoon, but my morning meetings, I knew what was coming tonight. I'm on for an hour and a half right now. And so my morning meetings were quiet. They were with individual people, and because I have to plan out my energy. So sometimes students have to do that too. And so they maybe know, like, well, in this class I have to speak, or in this class I can listen and then speak, or whatever it may be. So I would say, as much as possible, allow for some of that observation, and then figure out how that engagement needs to happen. Maybe it's, I need to speak at the beginning, I need to raise my hand, I need to get it over with, and then I can breathe and let others talk. Or she has some other ideas in here where it's I hear someone else speak, and I'm going to come back and piggyback on their idea and speak to that. Or maybe it's, okay, I need to let 2 minutes go by and then I'm going to speak. But so much of it is about speaking, and there is an element of listening within that too. So an introvert wants to listen so often. An introvert needs to listen, needs to observe. So when are they going to do each of those things? When are they going to engage? When are they going to speak, if necessary? When are they going to be able to listen and observe? And it's understanding the environment in each of those ways. And we can go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so many, when I was reading in the book and some of the solutions, strike early, identify your best entry point, use notes, observe classmates, all of those are good skills for anyone.
Yeah.
But especially with the social anxiety that a lot of our students have, and the fear of, not knowing the answer and the confidence level. I just feel like there's so many things in her book that can relate to every student at our school. So from the classroom, as a teacher, rethinking teaching techniques, what are some of the strategies that you've used or you're aware of that our teachers are using with our students?
She talks about this in the book a little bit, but more so in her podcast, I think, about the idea of there's the daily participation. I like daily engagement better. One of the classes that I teach has 90 students in it, and that's our symphony orchestra. And we're not going to have 90 students talk every day. That's not what we're doing there. And yet I can tell you who's engaged and who's there. I mean, they all are every day. There's eye contact, there's nodding, there's a smile, that is engagement as well. And I can tell you as a teacher, it means a lot. If we're talking, if we're presenting and everything and we have some of that, it's like, oh, okay, someone's paying attention, that's good. So that is a form of engagement as well. And the other thing I like about here with the block schedule, with our full block periods, not only do we as teachers have 2 connection points, we actually have 4. So if you think about it, right, I love those little tiny interactions with individual students. Oh, you have a baseball shirt on. When's your next game? Those little tiny conversations and points of connection, to me as an introverted teacher, mean so much. And that's what I try to engage, especially in my quietest students. Go up and say something, give a compliment, say something about them that you pay attention, that you see them. You don't have to hear them, but you do have to see them, right? Because if they're not talking, that's their choice. Give them something to hold on to so that they can connect. But we have 4 opportunities. We have entering class, entering the space, starting break, ending break, because we have a break in between classes, and then leaving the classroom. So we have 4 of those opportunities. And so often during the break time, that's when I'm walking around saying, how are you doing? All right. Oh, good. You did a great job on that today. And sometimes I will do something where I think, hey, you know what? I want to give you a heads up. I'm going to talk about this in a second. And I saw that you did a really great job during that part. Could I encourage you to please raise your hand right away and share what you did, because I really loved what I saw. I really loved what I heard. Or in that essay, I loved what you said that. Could you share that part? Because if they get that validation, and if they're like, oh, someone actually paid attention and would want to hear what I have to say, sure, I will. And I had that happen the other day in class. And then what I also did at the end was go back after and say, hey, thanks so much for speaking up. That was awesome. So there's those connections can mean so much.
So, you were sharing a little bit about how you engage. What are some suggestions for parents, for students to engage? Because I think there's times where I can think about it too. It's like, when do I go talk to that teacher? When's the right moment? How do they know about who I am and my learning style? So what are some suggestions that you would give parents to how they can support their child to get those entry points?
So often introverts can write beautifully. And please teach your children how to write an email. And we chuckle, right? And yet, how many emails do we receive? I'm looking at a teacher over here. How many emails do we receive that say, hey? Okay. But like writing and engaging like that, it can go a long way. So if you can, I even work on this. We'll talk about my child in a little bit. I have 2 children, but sometimes my children want something, and I'll say, okay, well, you need to talk to your teacher about that. I don't want to. Okay, well, what? And sometimes we'll even practice. We'll role play. All right, what would you say? What's the worst that can happen? They say no. They say no. Okay. Thank you for your time. Thanks for hearing me. You move on. You can do the role play. Or sometimes with my own children, I'll say, would you like to send an email? And the email could state in writing what the ask is, or share something that, hey, I want you to know this about me. It could also state, hey, I'd really like a couple minutes of your time to speak. Could we find that together? Because maybe they don't want to put everything in an email, but an email can be an ask of something, it can be a share, or it can be an ask of time. Hey, could we talk right after class? Could we talk during the break? Could we do that? Because then, hopefully, in that case, then it's going to be the teacher engaging the student, engaging the child in that. And so then it's out there, they know it's wanted, and they can move on. But really, don't just think that an email that's the only way, and here's what it has to say and everything. There's opportunities, and there's choices of what that communication can say. Please encourage proper greeting and ending. It means a lot.
Yeah, I was going to use an acronym, but I don't want to use that with kids text, or they usually put it in their emails too, thanks. Let LMK, I can't remember, let me know, yeah. So, what a gift we have with Elizabeth, what a true gift. She's remarkable, and so proud that she's, in front of our students here at New Trier. And some of the things that we talked about taking away from this is looking at some professional development for our teachers. And so, we tapped Elizabeth here, and she can share a little bit about what the plans are moving forward with some of the work that she's doing, and from tonight as well.
Well, I didn't even share this with you yet, but we have learning collaboratives at school where teachers get together and learn stuff. And after this went out, I got asked to visit a learning collaborative on Monday.
There you go.
And come talk about it. But I'm also planning on doing an entire learning collaborative next year on this for teachers to engage and speak with. And think about some lessons that they have, and who does it tend to lean towards? Does it engage everyone in terms of personalities, in terms of introverts, extroverts? Are you always using the same engagement tools? Is there a variety that we could think of and go from within there? And it depends on the class, it depends on the subject, it depends on the topic, of course. But I really want teachers to be thinking about that and not just push away students for being quiet. I got called out all the time growing up for, she needs to speak up. She needs to speak up. And I wish I would have had someone there to say, you need to listen better. You need to be quiet. You need to listen. And my parents are amazing, and they did that so often, but so often it was, well, you need to talk louder. I'm not going to talk louder, okay? Because I'm not going to talk over. And so often in classrooms, especially I would say at younger levels, that's what we're doing, right? Children are learning to control themselves, to know when to speak, to know when to not speak. And she talks in here about those students who process out loud. They speak, they think as they speak, and all of that. And that's not what introverts tend to do. Think of something, observe, take in the space, take in the room, and then go from there. And so if we can have more knowledge of that and everything, then we can go from there. And this movement of loudness in the world, particularly in this country, it hasn't always been like that. It really, really heightened during Carnegie's time and during all of that. And Susan Cain does a lot of that research. She talks about it in her full book, Quiet, and then again on her podcast. But it hasn't always been like this. And so I want to say, I love extroverts. I have a lot of extroverted friends, everything like that. And it takes everyone in the world, and it takes everyone speaking, and it takes everyone listening. And so we need more listening from the extroverts. We need more speaking from the introverts.
Thank you. So now we're going to go over, talk a little bit about Quiet in the Spotlight. And so, here's a couple pictures of Elizabeth here that I again found online. But the one is from, you took the group to Geffen Hall at the Lincoln Center in New York City. That's Elizabeth conducting. And then the smaller picture there is literally alumni in the spotlight, Elizabeth Bennett at Northwestern. And one of the things we were talking about is, it's hard to get up in front. It's hard to be, but we also don't want students to have missed opportunities. And I know you've shared with me some stories about how, you've made sure that you spoke to kids about what that means to have a missed opportunity and how you work around that. So, tell me a little bit about that missed opportunities and how you approach the Quiet in the Spotlight.
I always tell students, sometimes I use this in class. I say, okay, show me your comfort zone. I said, make a box. Show me your comfort zone. And this is nonverbal that I do. And some are like this, and some are like this. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do no matter what it is. We're going to stretch it. We're not going to break it. We're going to stretch it. I said, what does that mean for you? You stretching your comfort zone. What does that look like? Maybe it's applying to be a commencement speaker at your graduation, and that's like what you want to do. Maybe it's you're going to raise your hand and you're going to say something in class tomorrow. I mean, there's all sorts of examples and ideas, but stretching, not breaking a comfort zone. And I think a lot about, in a spotlight, I was talking to a colleague last week about this, and he gave a great example, 3 categories. Here's an opportunity, here's something to do, right? 3 categories. I like it, and I can do it. I don't like it, but I can do it. I don't like it, I can't do it. Okay? And so those 3 categories, right? And it's a matter of, if we're always in the I like it and I can do it category, we're not stretching ourselves. We're not stretching our comfort zone. But more importantly, it's about growth. It's about personal growth. Whether it's a child, whether it's an adult, like I think we should always be striving to do that. And so how can we get, most of the time, yes, we're in there, but sometimes we need to be in that I don't like it, but I can do it category. And so I wonder if you and your children, like if you think of those 3 buckets, where is it for them? What is it for them? Okay, I don't like it, but I can do it. All right, let's figure out some strategies that can work for you to do that. What does that look like? Maybe it includes before and after rest quiet time. And maybe it includes practicing at home, unlike if it's speaking, anything like that. Maybe it's something to look forward to, a reward afterwards. I mean, there's a whole variety of what your child will need, but what can those buckets look like? And the occasional bucket of, I don't like it, I can't do it, right? And if that's always where someone is living, that needs more help. That needs, whether it's from you, whether it's more engagement, more conversations. And I'm not talking about, I mean, yes, maybe it needs professional help, sure, wonderful. But that's not what I'm talking about. I think that needs more attention. And so think of your child. And think of, I would say this to teachers too, if you see someone always living there, of course they're anxious. If that's always where they are, that's not enjoyable. They have to have that stuff. They have to have some stuff over in this category too. So what can we find that's there? And that's where we go to spotlight, and in the classroom I made mention of it earlier about core personal passions. And Susan Cain talks a lot about this. If you have Audible, I recommend, she has an Audible only book, and it's called A Quiet Life in 7 Steps. She reads it. I love her voice too, so it's great. But she talks a lot about core personal passions, because maybe you'll see an introverted child like so quiet in a classroom, and they're always this, but then they get in front of a stage and they take on a character of someone else, or they're on this varsity team and they're a captain and they're there, because that's something that's a core personal passion of theirs, and that's where they want to shine, and they can do it. And I know of speakers who get up and they do this, and then they go hide right after they speak, and you would never know that they're an introvert, right? But that's what they believe in, everything within that. I think it's so important for us to find where that spotlight is, to find where that core personal passion is. And so then we can really come to life and do that. And of course then, how to manage the opposite sides of when we're not in it.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about quiet friendship. And one of the things that we know about many of our students is that social need to want to have friends and friendships, and not just one or two, but a lot of friends. And there's this assumption that everybody has tons of friends. And I was sharing with Elizabeth that back about 5 years ago, FAN had an event here we hosted the professor from Hamilton College, and he was sharing some insights from a study that they had conducted on how college students meet friends and what's the best way to meet friends and make connections. And after they interviewed, several students, they had, I forgot how many hundred they had in the study, that they all perceived that everybody had an abundance of friends. That was just what it was. And in fact, when they ended up interviewing these students to talk about, well, who are your friends? They said they really only had one or two. And it was one or two close friends that they could go to, that they could rely upon, and then how those friends then, they were part of their lives even after and beyond college. And I always feel, in this role as a principal, I always feel, not sad, but it's difficult when you hear that students haven't met their friend, or they don't have their friend group, or you're hearing that all these friends, and especially as parents, with social media, everything is out there that's happening, and it's hard for our kids not to see things. And so, with this quiet friendship, I think a lot about only having those one or two close friends. And that's okay, and I think it's great for an introvert or an extrovert. But can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the chapter on quiet friendship?
Mm-hmm. I think the main thing that people so often don't have with that is patience. And there are some people who have their very best friend that they met in kindergarten. Okay, sure. I'm not one of those. Most of my best friends are I met later in life, and great. But I learned more about myself. I knew more about myself then, right? So if your child is, I didn't have a parent that was forcing me to go to parties, right? Not every child wants to go to parties, and that's overwhelming. And so if you have a child that you think is introverted, maybe they know it, maybe they don't, but and they fight you on going out to things like that, because they're going to get totally drained, and that's not where they're going to make their friendships. If they can make it in these, if they find their core personal passions, and they find it, whether it be in a sport, or it be in tech crew, or it be wherever these places are, to have some of those common times, those common interests, maybe that's where they're going to find their friends. There's, in the idea of, in the vein of nothing is true. We always think it's better from a different lens. You look on social media and it's the same thing. If you're on social media, there's a lot of fun introverted sites, and pages on social media as well, and a lot of fun memes. Introverts have friends because an extrovert found them and took them under their wing, and some of the greatest friends I have, some of my best friends are introverts, some of them are totally extroverts, right? And so it doesn't mean that they have to be the same in order to be great friends. But if they can find their friends, if they can work through that, if they can be true to themselves, that has to be most important. Because if they're, again, she gave examples in here in the book of, not being true to oneself, then that's not going to be a true friendship either. And so being true to oneself, being patient. And if you as parents can help with that patience, you know how hard it is. We've lived longer than our children. We know that there's life after high school. We know that there's so much life after high school. You have to encourage them through that and to help them see that and get them there. Some of my best friends I made as an adult. And I hope some of you can say that same thing, right? But get them to that, and get them to, there is more out there. It doesn't all have to be here. This is a big place. They're going to find friends. They'll have that, but that's not all there is. It's a much bigger world there. So patience and vision.
I appreciate that, because I was thinking, and I think I wrote it in my notes earlier, but it's like you even as you're older now, I consider myself an extrovert and wanted to be a part of doing all kinds of things. And now in my adult age, I really don't want to be around very many people. Friends are important, but one or two key friends. I wish I would have had some of this information a long, long time ago. But even as adults, you can feel insecure about having who are all your friends. But I really believe in the 1 to 2 really good people you can rely on when you're really having a bad day.
And sometimes that's where you get your energy. Yeah. It as an introvert, you don't necessarily only get your energy by being alone. Sometimes it's with that really close friend, because you feed off of each other and you can share things and you can talk and you're going to be heard.
All right, quiet with family. So here we have a picture here. You want to talk a little bit about that picture?
Yeah, that's my oldest. That's my oldest child, and she plays the oboe. My main instrument is bassoon, so we get to play together. There's 5 double reed players in my family. We're fun, and but for us, like sometimes that's how we show. I want to just touch base on the activities one other time. Sometimes that's how we share a voice. It's through an instrument, or it's through a ball, or it's through a field, or it's on a stage. Like I know so many introverts who are actors, and because they can take on a persona of someone else. It's not them. They can be all of that and then some. But then they can go be quiet on their own. That's really who they are. And it can be fun to take on that persona for a bit. So sometimes we have other ways to share our voices and play pretend for a little bit. But yeah, that's one of my girls' oldest. And I don't want to label my girls because I want them to be able to figure out what they are, and yet I can tell where I have 2 girls, where they get their energy sometimes, and it's kind of fun. I mean, parenting can be fun, right? It is hard, yes, but parenting, I saw some sighs there, but it's fun too to see these humans grow and develop, and they're their own unique person, and that's pretty cool, and so to encourage that as much as we can is great. So as family, it's been so fun thinking of this and getting ready for tonight, because I thought, I have a quiet family. Like, I mean, we have a lot of musicians in my family, and I mean, at Thanksgiving we gather around the piano and we all sing sometimes, so that's fun. But other than that, it's not big raucous things, anything like that. We're pretty quiet. And I think it'd be okay, I won't share the name, but I had a fellow leader see that we were doing this, and she's like, I gotta talk to you about that. I'm an extrovert. Everyone in my family is an extrovert, but I have an introverted kid, and I just don't know how to engage. And I said, do you always approach him at that volume?
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was someone that I knew could handle that, like just, yeah. And she went, I think I do. And I said, does he have a favorite place in the house? And think of your child. If you have an introverted child, do they have a favorite place in the house? Right? And she went, yes. He would love to be by the fire on the couch reading. And I said, let him be there. And then you come to him. You come to him quietly. Hey, sit down with them. Don't come at him like this. We have to do all of this stuff, and here we go. How was your day? I mean, so if I don't know who's, and we can do the poll here. Like, raise your hand if you're an introvert. No one's going to raise their hand, right? But if you're an extrovert and you have an introverted child, think: are you ever coming to them? Are you ever quiet? Do you ever allow for silence? That's something I love in the classroom too, is allow for silence. And sometimes it's anxiety inducing. I get that too. But it allows for pause. And sometimes in the classroom, like, you are not allowed to speak because you have those extroverts that will always raise their hand first. Nope, I'm not going to call on anyone for 20 seconds, right? And allow for silence, allow for space. But what about in your families too, right? We talked about after school, after an event, after an activity, right? Come home and be on. Maybe they can't do that. They're totally drained, right? And yet you want to engage with them, right? Your parents, you want to engage with your children. So share with them that. Share with them some expectations, some interest in engagement. Hey, I can see that you really need some time, and I want to allow for that. I also really want to hear about your day. When would be a good time to do that tonight? Do you need an hour? Do you need to eat dinner by yourself? And then we can talk. Give them some choice. Let them know that you're paying attention to all of that, and that you don't, it's not only your rules all the time. Yes, as parents, we have rules, and we have to. And, right, allow for their personality. Don't just let it be yours running the show. Give them that idea. Or, hey, I noticed that we haven't been engaged in a while, and you've been so busy, and you've had all of that. we don't have a lot going on this day. Can we go out to lunch together? Where's your favorite spot? You want to go to a quiet spot. Because you know that there's those loud restaurants where you can't hear anyone, and those can be overwhelming. Those examples, those can be overwhelming to introverts. I took my children to Dave & Buster's, and it was great, and it was overwhelming. They wanted to leave at a point. They're like, this is too much. That's draining too. So where are your family environments? Where are your gatherings? Are they always in loud, big places, and your introverted child never engages? Yeah, that's why. Is there some of the other elements too? Is there time for quiet? Is there allowance for quiet? And maybe there's you know what? You're going to have to be on. We're going to this function. It's going to be with a lot of people. I need you to talk. I need you to do this. And afterwards, you're going to have all the quiet time you need. Maybe they need the before, maybe they need the afterwards, but see what they need. Because sometimes you're at a function, right? Or you're at an event or a family gathering, and they're just there. And you need them to talk. You need them to do that. Talk them up to it. It's, again, the same concept as the classroom, when to raise your hand, when not, right? Let's talk about what we could say. How could you engage with this family member at this event, whatever it may be? Would quiet time beforehand help you? Would downtime afterwards? Maybe tomorrow night we don't plan anything. But if your kids are in events that they have to be on and it's not a core personal passion every single day, and it's not something that they're gathering energy and joy from, you're probably not going to get a lot of engagement. If they don't have the time to recharge, where are they going to do it? You should be their safety. You want to engage with them. They probably want to engage with you. They're not going to tell you that. But, right? And yet, what does it look like? I always try to look at the scope of a week. Look at the scope of a week from either Sunday to Saturday, Monday through Sunday, whatever it may be. Where are they on? Where are we on as a family? What are we doing? It's big, loud, everything. That's where these people are going to get our energy. Where's the quiet? If you're on, you have to plan some of that in. And we were talking yesterday in leadership about kind of some organization and schedule and everything. And something I do sometimes here is I have to plan out when I have days of meetings that I am just on constantly. I have to plug in time for quiet and to work so that I can actually recharge and be best for my colleagues and everything like that. You want your child to bring their best to you on occasion. You all get their worst, too, because you are their safety. And yet, in order to get some of their best, allow for that space. I do just want to point out, so I did reach out to Susan Kane about this. Again, not a very introverted thing. It's funny, I've looked into her speaking before. I'm like, oh, maybe she's going to speak. So, no, she's not going to speak. She's an introvert, right? No. And if you haven't watched her TED Talks, she does have some, and they're amazing and wonderful. And her introverted TED Talk is consistently rated as one of the best TED Talks. But she also has some other books, and I'm not getting anything for plugging her. Let me make that very clear, okay? As I've said, I'm just a big fan, okay? And she's smart, and she relates, and she does the work. But she has not only Quiet Power book, but she has Quiet, and then she also has a book called Bittersweet. So all of her books, I think, are very wonderful. And then I reached out to her, and I let her know that this was happening. And I got a reply. That's kind of cool. And because it was all through writing and we didn't have to interact otherwise, right? But she said, be sure to share this, that here's 5 tips for raising a quietly strong child. Number 1, don't just accept your child for who she is. Take delight in who she is. Introverted children are usually kind, thoughtful, interesting company as long as they're in settings that work for them. Number 2, don't overprotect your child, but do remember that introverted children must travel down a longer runway before they take off and fly. Number 3, introverted kids usually have the capacity to develop great passions. Cultivate these enthusiasms. Intense engagement in an activity is a proven route to happiness, and a well-developed talent brings confidence. And that's what I've talked about with like a core personal passion. Number 4, one size does not fit all. For example, if your child prefers small birthday parties with 1 or 2 close friends to the standard fiesta for the entire class, that's perfectly fine. Number 5, go to social events like birthday parties early. Let your child feel as if others are joining them in a space that they own, rather than having to break into a pre-existing group. And so she does have more. She has a lot on susankane.net. And if this is your only intro to her, I encourage you to dive in a bit more. She has a newsletter. It's called The Quiet Community. And she shares a lot of delightful things. And I encourage you to reach out to her. Don't necessarily expect a reply, but engage and see what she has, and see a lot of her articles are specific for parents and specific for students as well.
I'm blessed to be part of this community. It's a fabulous school. We have wonderful kids and wonderful parents. So, we're New Trier because of you. So thank you for being here this evening and joining us, and safe travels home. And thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth.